Hello and welcome to another episode of Sci-Fi-Night Top 5. In this segment of the show, we list some of our top 5 favorite things, basically, just so long as it has to do with sci-fi and or horror. In this episode, we're checking out our top 5 evil corporations. The main villains in sci-fi movies usually tend to be aliens, monsters, killer robots, or something along those lines. A lot of the time though, greedy, money-driven corporations are the real villain though, just like in real life. They are the ones who actually place our heroes in peril and control the stuff behind the scenes. So in other words, Darth Vader is kind of like the monster, but Emperor Palpatine is actually the one behind the scenes pulling the strings. So, one criteria is that this can't be a full-fledged army firsthand. Sure, it can be a private security company, but overall it has to be a company first, security force second. So basically, we're ranking these companies based on how evil and cool they are. So, first off, we're going to start off with not one, but 2 honorable mentions. The Umbrella Corporation from the Resident Evil series, and Soylent Corporation from Soylent Green. So, Umbrella loses a couple points for technically being a corporation from a video game that was later adapted to a film series. Most of those points, however, are lost on account of how shitty most of those films are.
What the fuck is this?
The Umbrella Corporation deals with biological, chemical, and zombie-based weapons. Lacking any sort of ethics or smarts regarding the handling of biological agents, the Umbrella Corporation will sacrifice anything and anyone in order to, build the ultimate zombie weapon? Alright, see, there's one thing I just don't really get. I mean, considering how many times the Umbrella Corporation screw up and let loose a horde of zombies to massacre an entire city, who's gonna want to actually buy their biological weapons when they can't control them themselves? I mean, I don't get who keeps pumping money into this company or how they're actually making a profit. Most of their experiments end in disaster, but whatever. I kind of like the first movie, even if it's a bad adaptation, but Resident Evil 2 was so bad that it was offensive. And after that, since the filmmakers decided to give up on the plot, I more or less decided to give up on the franchise. Alright, so normally I don't really talk about spoilers on this show, and certainly not the twist ending of any film, but considering the fact that Soylent Green is over 30 years old and the twist ending is pretty well known, we're gonna talk about it anyways, so spoiler warning. In a not too distant future, where our overconsumption of resources is bringing the world to its knees, the Soylent Corporation is what keeps everything running. How does the corporation manage to feed the people while also keeping the population under control? Well, that's because we're turning humans into food.
I haven't eaten like this in years.
See, I would consider this entry to be higher on the list in terms of evilness if it didn't inadvertently serve as some form of education regarding the fact that we're destroying the planet. Yeah, like it makes sense when you watch a film, seriously, stop fucking up the planet or we're gonna end up eating your grandmother, okay? So, even if what the Soylent Corporation are doing is morally wrong, honestly, that's what everyone in this world would do too if there was no food, just in a less civilized manner. Alright, so with the honorable mentions out of the way, we're gonna get to the top 5 list that all 5 of you have been dying to see. So, the number 5 spot on this list goes to the Tyrell Corporation from Blade Runner. Blade Runner follows Harrison Ford, who's on the hunt for escaped and murderous androids.
They jumped the shuttle off-world, killed the crew and passengers. We found the shuttle drifting off the coast 2 weeks ago, so we know they're around.
Embarrassing.
No, sir, not embarrassing, because no one's ever going to find out they're down here. But you're going to spot them, and you're going to air them out.
This is such a great movie, and one of my all-time favorite sci-fi films. Why is it so great? Because it's both artistic and very smart. In this fictional future, the Tyrell Corporation builds human-like androids to serve as workers on off-world colonies. However, they're built with a shelf life of 4 years, so that their customers will have to keep on buying more androids since they after a while shut down. So you know, like how nowadays when you buy a phone or some kind of electronic product, it always stops working like a little while after the warranty's gone out and you can't get a refund for it? Think that, but with human-like androids. When the androids start acting out of self-preservation, wanting to live, learning and exploring instead of being glorified machines, they escape and run amok. Now, Rutger Hauer's portrayal of the android Roy baddie is great, and we all know I love me some Rutger Hauer, but he's not the real villain here. No, the real villain is the Tyrell Corporation. The Tyrell Corporation's slogan is "More human than human." They create androids that are so human that they share our desire for life and continued existence.
She doesn't know.
She's beginning to suspect, I think.
Suspect? How can it not know what it is?
Commerce is our goal here at Tyrell. More human than human is our motto. Rachel is an experiment, nothing more.
The cruel 4-year lifespan they have is solely based on greed and the darkest downsides of capitalism. The Tyrell Corporation built them just to be like humans, but without giving them a humane lifespan. This forced the androids to act out of self-preservation at the cost of many human lives. So, with that philosophical entry out of the way, we're going to move on to something a bit more lighthearted, a corporation whose idiocy kind of outweigh their evilness. We're talking, of course, about Cyberdyne Systems / Skynet from the Terminator series. So this is a shared place because Skynet is more or less a daughter company of Cyberdyne Systems, or kind of the same thing. Cyberdyne Systems dabble in all kinds of risky artificial intelligence. Then they build Skynet, an almost completely automated artificial intelligence to control and oversee some of the deadliest weapons on Earth.
The Skynet funding bill is passed. The system goes online on August 4, 1997. Human decisions are removed from strategic defense. Skynet begins to learn at a geometric rate. It becomes self-aware at 2:14 a.m. Eastern Time, August 29th.
So yeah, you let some artificial intelligence control most of the world's nukes. As you can tell, a lot of these corporations are pretty rich, but they're not necessarily the smartest. Trying to eliminate the risk of human error, Skynet instead sees humanity as a threat and decides to launch World War III.
Early warning in Alaska's down. What?
Signals from half our satellites are scrambled beyond recognition.
What about the missile silos, the subs?
We've lost contact.
Dear God, you're saying this country is completely open to attack. Theoretically, we could be under attack already.
Now, in all fairness, Cyberdyne Systems aren't so much evil as they are greedy, lazy, and incredibly stupid. Still though, their ignorance caused Judgment Day, which is douchebaggy enough to land them on the number 4 spot on this list. Alright, that brings us to number 3, and let me tell you, these guys are assholes. I'm of course talking about MNU, or Multinational United from District 9. MNU is a fictional corporation that deals with almost everything, but most of all energy and private security. They get contracted by the South African government when an enormous alien ship filled with otherworldly beings arrives just outside of Johannesburg.
UIO protocol dictates that we give the aliens 24 hours notice of our right to evict. Today, you will serve these notices, getting the aliens to sign the I-27 form.
MNU is supposed to keep the aliens in control, but what they do instead is suppress the alien population through strict special segregation, mistreat them, steal their technology, and perform horrible experiments on both humans and aliens alike. Yeah, so like I said, these guys are assholes. So you can think of MNU like a better funded Blackwater, but with more departments. Overall, when it comes to evil sci-fi corporations, it doesn't get much more evil than the underrated MNU. Alright, we're past the halfway point, and it brings us to the number 2 spot, which is occupied by a chillingly realistic depiction of evil over privatization. I'm of course talking about OCP, Omni Consumer Products from RoboCop. Now, compared to some of the other corporations on this list, OCP might not seem quite as evil, but what makes them so creepy is how eerily close we're getting to sci-fi becoming a reality. In RoboCop, everything is privatized. Hospitals, space programs, even the police force.
Police union leaders blame Omni Consumer Products, OCP, the firm which recently entered into a contract with the city to fund and run the Detroit Metropolitan Police Department.
The OCP cuts the pay of all the cops, and while employing the police force of the city of Detroit, the OCP also hires criminals to fight them, and they even equip the criminals with even better weapons.
There's another guy! He's OCP, he's the senior president!
Anything you say may be used against you.
It's danger!
On top of that, OCP are bankrupting the city, who are in debt to the company, and they more or less just want to wait to replace Detroit with Delta City instead of actually solving Detroit's problems. They put military-grade weapons on the streets and in boardrooms, with some pretty bad results.
Dick, I'm very disappointed. I'm sure it's only a glitch.
So that just goes to show you that privatization isn't always the answer, especially when there's an evil douchebag called Dick Jones running things. What's so scary about the OCP is that their existence and level of power seems scarily realistic. Just look at how increasingly militarized the police force is getting in the United States.
The shooting by police of teenager Michael Brown has sparked a series of protests, which in turn sparked a, let's say, stern response by police who appear to be auditioning for RoboCop. It's,
Also, the sheer ruthlessness and lack of humanity that OCP has is both terrible and terribly hilarious thanks to the dark humor of the first two films.
I thought all communication systems were the same. It took 2 days to download specs from Cleveland. Lost the account.
Overall, the OCP is a company you definitely wouldn't want controlling your city. Alright, so that brings us to the much anticipated #1 spot, and by much anticipated I mean you might have heard of it. This goes to one of the OGs of evil, greedy, money-driven, death-causing corporations. Of course, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation from the Alien series. Think about it. Does it really get much more evil than the Weyland-Yutani Company? This corporation knowingly sends its own employees to certain death solely for the purpose of being able to bring back and trying to control an alien menace that is quite clearly uncontrollable and extremely dangerous.
Yeah. Look, Ripley, this is a multi-million-dollar installation, okay? He can't make that kind of decision. He's just a grunt. No offense.
None taken.
Weyland-Yutani sacrifice humans as if they were pawns in a chess game, and even seem to show no remorse or regard for human life whatsoever. Yeah, that's pretty messed up, isn't it? I mean, the Weyland-Yutani Corporation are willing to sacrifice their own employees, military-grade soldiers, and even entire colonies filled with families. But what's even more messed up is that there's probably existing companies today that would do the same thing if it meant that they could make a bigger dollar. So why are Weyland-Yutani so determined to get their hands on the xenomorphs? Well, that's not really clear, but a huge corporation willing to kill tons of people in order to get their hands on the most deadly creature in the universe next to man, that's pretty freaky. Take it away, Ripley.
You know, Burke, I don't know which species is worse. You don't see them bucking each other over for a goddamn percentage.
One of the most hilariously ironic things about Weyland-Yutani is that their slogan is building better worlds. That's pretty funny considering that their fuck-ups led to the nuking of a planet. Overall, Weyland-Yutani is my #1 spot simply because of how ruthless and interesting they are as a company. I mean, the idea of weaponizing something like the xenomorphs is actually pretty interesting, even if it is pretty ridiculous and absurd. In all fairness, a lot of the coolness has to do with the aliens they want to get a hold of, but their treacherous methods do enough to make it to the top of the list. So, that about does it for this episode of Sci-Fi-Night Top 5. We hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please let us know in the comments below, where you can also let us know what you thought of the movies we brought up in this list, what your list looks like, and topics for future Top 5 lists as well. So, with that out of the way, as always, I'm your host, Sebastian Vandel Martinez, and we'll catch you guys next time.
OCP is proud to present the future of urban pacification. RoboCop 2.